Okay, I wasn't going to do it, but the B word, Brexit. This is going to be a Brexit video. Now you'll notice on my channel they're relatively rare, except around the time of the referendum. And the reason for this is honestly, like I'm sure a lot of people, I'm tired of hearing about the B word. I'm tired of hearing about Brexit. It's really dominated this country for 6 years. Um, Probably coming on 7 years when we think the seeds were set probably in late 2015. Um, well, long before that, but really it started getting into the public debate, I guess, around late 2015. Um, why now? Well, I've come across a debate forum. It's about democracy and issues around democracy in general, but basically, one person who I know is a staunch Remain person was posting how there's a desire for another referendum, and of course, one of the arch leavers was taking issue with that. So I want to give my take right now, and I really hope my subscriber base is mixed on this one. The reason I say that is because I personally, I voted Remain. Let me just get that out there. I did vote Remain, but not passionately so. No, certainly not as passionately as some Remain people. And I'm not in a rush for another referendum. I'm going to lay out a lot of the reasons for this herein. But I think it's too early for another referendum because I don't think we left formally in January 2020, and it's still the Northern Ireland Protocol that's being, it's a major issue. So there's still a lot of question marks. But I think that it's just far too early to really judge this as a whole, to say it's all good or it's all bad. And I think both sides are guilty of hyperbole. I mean, the Leave side, the Brexiteers definitely were projecting this image that we'll take back control and it'll be all wonderful. And they accused the other side of Project Fear, but maybe they were peddling Project Fantasy. There was a notorious billboard on the bus about the money for the NHS. Um, One of many, many areas that Boris Johnson's dishonesty was shown to be quite glaring. But anyway, I think that it's just too early. I think 2.5 years is too early to really, really assess the impact of this. I think if things were to get so bad and they could be provably related to Brexit, that might be an exceptional situation. I don't think things are that bad. Yes, there's rising living costs, but this is something we're seeing all over the world. And a large part of that is to do with the invasion of Ukraine. Indeed, a lot of the major international stories, incidents that have happened um, in the last few years have affected many countries. The invasion of Ukraine, certainly, COVID, certainly. Um, I don't think they've had a significant impact one way or the other on Brexit, or rather, I don't think our leaving the EU has made a difference in the impact on this country because other European countries that are very much still in the EU have also seen rising living costs. They've also seen issues related to that. So not every bad thing that happens can be blamed on Brexit. But I do think there's an onus on Brexiteers to prove its merits. It's not good enough for them to say, "Oh, shut up, we won. Just shut up." The onus is on them if they're saying another referendum's illegitimate. Um, the onus is on them to prove that leaving was the right decision, and that means proving the benefits that we've got from it. At the moment, what can we think of? Well, Liz Truss struck up those trade deals with Australia and Japan. I give her credit for that. It shows her work as foreign secretary, which people like James O'Brien underestimate. Actually, I think Truss is a decent foreign secretary. Um, who's going to be against that? Those sort of trade deals. Only the most dogmatic Remainer would be against that. So there's that. What else? Taking back control. Well, there's still a lot of dissatisfaction with our justice system. So if the opportunities have presented themselves, have we really taken back control? I mean, a lot of this isn't even EU legislation. A lot of this were pre-existing problems we've had in this country. I mean, I think we've long, long had a problem between public opinion and the legal establishment. Yes, there's the European Court of Human Rights, although again, you know, it's not entirely a bad thing. I think the leavers point to some of the nonsense that has come out of their decisions, not necessarily the Court of Human Rights, but like for example, there's precise measurements that need to be put on produce, and if it's not abiding by those regulations, then you see waste and things like that. I do think the EU is very wasteful. Um, But yeah, I think the onus is on levers to show what the merits are rather than just telling the other side to shut up. That's not an argument. Um, I'm dead set against Scottish independence. I want the UK to stay together. But I have never said that Scottish nationalists don't have a democratic right to their opinion. I've never said they can't complain about the UK. I've argued with some of their positions and I thoroughly oppose their position, but I've never said that they don't have a right to have a voice. They do. That's the thing about democracy. Everyone has a right to an opinion. And it's something, let me start with what I dislike about the Leave side. Um, because honestly, I think both sides are guilty of stoking the division. So I'm going to try and address why I think this is happening and why I think both sides are not exactly helping. I do think that there is this dogmatic, hardcore side of leavers. I'm not talking about people who say, okay, we voted to leave the European Union and you should respect democracy. That's reasonable. I'm talking about those, you get a lot of Tory backbenchers, you get the Jacob Rees-Moggs of this world. These are people who treat Brexit like a religion. They really do. They treat it like a quasi-religion. And anyone who doesn't conform is guilty of blasphemy. They're really dogmatic about it. And this absurd kind of purity test always is Truss really a true believer? Is Sunak really a true believer? It's pathetic. It's almost like an internal Tory civil war. But this litmus test of which MPs have Brexit purity, and I have to say, the likes of GB News have been fueling this. Um, it's pathetic. All it's doing is fueling intolerance because it's pitching this idea of this person's not patriotic enough, and this person is. Yeah, I really don't like it. Now, in politics, dogma, I'm not saying there's no place for it, and I suppose people could say I'm dogmatic on the issue of crime and justice, right? I don't have much respect for those who say we should be lenient with criminals. So I suppose I am dogmatic on that. But I don't get to the point of saying they don't have a right to an opinion. And I think some Brexiteers do have this idea that because they won, then suddenly the other side lose their right to even have an opinion. That's nonsense. Winning a referendum means that the result goes your way. It means that the other side have to respect that the decision, but it does not mean that the other side just have to shut up. And this is what I dislike about referendums fundamentally. They create these sort of divisions, especially when it's close. I mean, let's say we have another referendum on EU membership, because let's say some polls show that lots of Leave people now change their minds, right? Well, let's have another referendum. What happens if it's close? What happens if it's close? Then the Leavers will say it was a great betrayal and let's have another referendum to bring back Brexit, and it would just never end. So I think that really we need to wait at least 10 years, at least. I don't think things are going to get so bad that will be begging to rejoin. I think that is hyperbole, and I think it is alarmism from the Remain side. But at the same time, Brexit has not been the utopia that the Leave side were making it out to be. And yes, there's things like COVID and the invasion of Ukraine that, like I say, would have impacted this country either way. But the whole thing about taking back control and about how wonderful it would be, this country is not particularly happy right now. I think there's a lot of anger out there, and there's a lot of unease about a lot of things. So if the whole point of Brexit was we're going to have this bright, wonderful future, it hasn't happened yet. That's all I'm going to say. It has not happened yet. Liz Truss was quoted in the Daily Express recently saying, "Our best days lie ahead." I wish I could believe that. But honestly, there's a lot of question marks right now. It's a question mark even on the survival of the UK. And I hope that is misplaced. I don't think the Scottish referendum, another Scottish referendum, is going to happen next year. I think that's going to fall flat. But there are questions on the Northern Ireland Protocol, and maybe nationalism is growing in Wales. That's been underreported. Maybe there is something going on there. But I, I don't think anyone could rationally say Britain's a particularly happy country right now. There's a lot of anger over rising crime levels. Now, again, this has nothing to do with Brexit. That's I think there's issues going on in this country that we've always faced, but they are particularly bad right now. Um, but taking back control, okay, we have control over our own justice system, so let's improve it. Let's make it more accountable. That's entirely the responsibility of the Tories. They can make it happen if they have the willpower. Um, but I just, it's like this constant punch and Judy thing. I mean, I've mentioned the dogma of Brexiteers, so for the other side, one of the big issues I take with them is they are totally blind to the EU's flaws. They also seem to love the EU. I'm talking about hardcore Remainers here. They seem to love the EU more than their own country. I mean, it doesn't help that when they have the EU rallies, they're waving those EU flags, but you would be hard pressed to find a UK flag. And they also have this very obnoxious way of associating anyone who disagrees with them as some sort of populist nationalist. Of course, a big part of Brexit was about nationalism, but not everyone who voted Leave is a raving nationalist. Far from it. Um, but by the same token, not everyone who voted Remain is just Euro lover. I'm a European. I have no problem calling myself a European. And one reason I voted Remain was sentimental. I was saddened to think that we were divorcing ourselves from our closest neighbours. Practically, I just didn't think it was a good idea to leave the European Union, geopolitically speaking. I think it's better to be in international associations than out of them, generally speaking. Um, but the EU was getting too federalist. It was getting too much like the United States of Europe, and some pro-EU people seemed totally okay with that. They did seem to have a disregard for sovereignty. The EU itself, I think, is pretty arrogant. I mean, it tends to see dissent as a nuisance, as a sort of. I wouldn't go so far as some Brexiteers to say it's a dictatorship. I think that's extreme hyperbole. To compare it to the Soviet Union, I think that's the EU is not putting people in gulags, right? But I do think it's arrogant, and I do think it kind of sees dissent as this nuisance, as oh, they're not getting with the program. My father worked in Rotterdam for 4 years, and he said that when he left in 2016, so the year we voted to leave, or the year a lot of us voted to leave, and he said a lot of the Dutch, their attitude was very much like one of total shock. How could you do this? But he said, well, it's democracy. That is democracy. Um, I think one issue is that this country has had political stability for a very long time. I mean, we haven't had, aside from the troubles in Northern Ireland, we have not had significant internal political violence or unrest in the UK. Really, the last time you'd have to really consider that there was anything close to revolution, I guess, would be the swing riots and the Rebecca riots during the Industrial Revolution, or perhaps the events around the Great Reform Act. But really, the last time we had a civil war in Britain, you have to go back to the Wars of the Three Kingdoms, really, or maybe the Jacobite risings, of which the last was 1746. I mean, that's compare that to France or Germany or other Italy. It's something we take for granted in this country. I think that's one reason this Brexit thing has been so divisive, because it has been bitter, it has been angry, and I've seen it on both sides. But hardcore leavers need to drop this idea that if people vote Remain, they're not patriotic. And Tory MPs who voted Remain are traitors. It's very obnoxious. It's very intolerant. Um, but by the same token, hardcore Remainers need to respect democracy. You can say that people were misled. You can say these sort of arguments are always going to be made during referendums. I think that's a little bit of a. It also infantilizes people like they were idiots to vote for this. Maybe some people didn't think it through. In which case, I think people should always think about their votes, even in elections, especially in a referendum. People need to think about their votes. But both sides need to just take it down a notch. Um, I would say the Leave side need to stop acting like because they won the referendum, they're the only ones allowed an opinion. And they really do give that impression. I mean, when John Major spoke up on this, you had Douglas Murray saying he needs to go away and shut up. Well, no, he's he's a former prime minister and he's as much a right to an opinion as anyone else. Um, then you have Remain people. They're doom mongering and saying it's been a complete disaster. I don't think it has, but they're demanding another referendum, which is only going to cause more division. Um, and they are blind to the EU's many flaws. Um, and it doesn't help that they have this knee jerk attitude which is hostile to the very idea of British patriotism. Um, so really, I think both sides need to just turn it down a little bit. I honestly think it's just too early. I mean, I haven't travelled outside this country since January 2019, since I came back from China. Now, next time I go to mainland Europe, if I'm going to be stuck in a queue, I might be thinking, yeah, this is bloody Brexit. Um, I don't know. Or if I'm applying for that European travel pass or whatever it's called, I forget the name now. I just hope it's straightforward. I hope it's not bureaucratic. But I remember even when that report was released, again, it gets into this Brexit sanctity. People were saying this is clearly a result of Brexit. Even some Brexiteers were admitting that. You had the dogmatic type saying, oh, shut up, it's nothing to do with Brexit. Well, it clearly was. So I think there is a dishonesty on both sides. The dishonesty from the hardcore leavers is their absolute refusal to connect anything to Brexit that might actually be Brexit. But the dishonesty on the hardcore Remain side is the dishonesty of not acknowledging the EU's flaws. Or perhaps it's not so much dishonesty, it's more um, selective analysing. I did vote Remain, but not enthusiastically. So I don't love the EU. I don't regret my decision at all. But this country's not falling apart. We're not sinking. We've got problems, and I don't think we're a particularly happy country right now. And there are question marks about the future. I think saying that it's all a disaster, it's almost that philosophy of you say something enough, it becomes so. So the constant doom mongering from Remainers, it's not helping anyone. But the intolerance from Brexiteers isn't helping either because it's this it's this attitude that if you win a referendum, the other side has to shut up. Now, Scotland, to use that as an example, better to get a one, and I think the nationalists have to respect that. I don't think they have. Much like Remainers haven't fully accepted, or hardcore Remainers haven't fully accepted the EU referendum, Scottish nationalists haven't accepted that referendum. But just shows why referendums are toxic, because the losing side is obviously going to say, oh, it's foul play, it's misleading. Um, you're never going to make people happy with referendums because the winning side is going to feel that the losing side doesn't respect democracy, and the losing side is going to claim that it was people were misled. It's just I think we should have as few referendums as possible. I mean, really, before 2016, people were not talking in terms of this person's a leaver, this person's a remainer. I think the way the tabloids handle it is appalling. I think they deliberately fuel the flames. I think GB News fuels the flames. Um, but people just need to notch it down a step or two. Just because someone voted differently from you doesn't mean they're your enemy. It doesn't mean they're less British than you are, and it doesn't mean that they're a racist or a little Englander either. People just need to turn it down a little bit. I respect people who vote leave, who vote with leave. I respect people who vote with remain. And both sides, yeah. I just wish people would just turn it down a notch or two. This hyperbole that both sides come out with. You're either a pure Brexiteer or you're a traitor. Or if you're a Brexiteer, you're an idiot and you're a closed-minded nationalist. Both those conjectures are wrong. And it's not a case that I'm totally on the fence with this. I don't like Brexit. And I think possibly my gut feeling is maybe it was a mistake, maybe. But sometimes I look at narratives coming from the EU and some of their positions, and I think, well, maybe we did make the right decision. Maybe this arrogant body, it's more than arrogant, it can be quite bullying at times um, in the way it goes about things. We've seen anger in other European countries. Euroscepticism is far from refined to the UK. And if the EU does eventually fail, it will be its arrogance that was its downfall, its failure to recognise contentions, and definitely its push for a United States of Europe. That's never ever going to happen because there'd be too many questions. Where would the capital be? What would the language be? Um, I think it's great to have like-minded Western democracies working together. I'm 100% behind that, especially with Russia's antics this year. I think it's very, very important the European countries are united. But the idea of a United States of Europe was never realistic. It was never realistic. Okay, I'm going to wrap this up. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if you voted Leave or Remain. If you see where I'm coming from with this. By the way, I'm not attacking. I'm only criticizing the hardcore elements of both sides. I think honestly, there's a lot of ordinary people or moderate people who either voted Leave or voted Remain. They just want to get on with it. I think Keir Starmer was right when he said we should look at the opportunities, and that was actually very savvy of Starmer because the Tories can't accuse him of being a Remainer lawyer when he's actually saying let's get behind Brexit. That's a void argument. I do think Labour, like much of the country, the problem Labour had was their direction was not clear. Um, Corbyn eventually backed, remaining, but it was kind of reluctantly, so it wasn't. Yeah, well, Corbyn kind of flip flopped on the issue, but anyway, let me know your thoughts.